Have you ever stopped to wonder why your heart pounds when you get scared? Common sense tells us it's because of the fear. But what if I told you that over a century of science suggests we've got it completely backward? Today, we're diving into this pretty radical idea that we don't have physical reactions because we feel an emotion. We actually feel the emotion because our body is already reacting.
So let's just think about this for a second with a classic thought experiment. Picture this. You're walking in the woods, and suddenly you see a bear. Now, do you run because you feel fear? Or do you feel that fear because your heart is already pounding, your muscles are tensing up, and your legs are already starting to move? It's a question that might just flip your whole understanding of emotion completely upside down.
And here's what that really looks like. On the left, you've got the common sense model. An event happens, we feel something about it, and then our body reacts. Simple enough. But on the right, well, that's the revolutionary theory from the psychologist William James. He argued the whole sequence is reversed. First comes the event, then the bodily reaction, and only then does our brain interpret that reaction as what we call a feeling.
James put it so brilliantly with his own thought experiment. Think about it. What is an emotion like fear if you strip away all the physical stuff? The racing heart, the shallow breathing, the tense muscles, what's actually left? James argued it's just a cold, intellectual thought. In his view, those physical feelings, those bodily reverberations, they are the emotion.
Now, as you can probably imagine, this idea did not go unchallenged. It basically kicked off this massive scientific debate that went on for decades. It became a genuine mind-body mystery, and trust me, not everyone was convinced by James's radical, backward idea.
Yeah, the biggest and most powerful critique came from Walter Cannon, who was actually a colleague of James at Harvard. And he pointed out something absolutely crucial. Your heart races when you're angry, but it also races when you're scared, or even when you're passionately in love. So if the same general bodily arousal happens for so many different feelings, how could it possibly be the source of our very distinct emotional experiences? And you gotta admit, that's a really good point.
Okay, so to really get to the bottom of this debate, we need to kind of look under the hood at the system that's responsible for all these bodily reverberations. It's time to explore the body's two emotional engines.
What we're talking about here is the autonomic nervous system, or the ANS. The best way to think of it is as your body's automatic control panel, just constantly running in the background. It manages everything you don't consciously think about, your heart rate, your breathing, your digestion, and it is absolutely central to how we experience emotions.
And when you look at this, what really jumps out is just how complex the ANS is. It's not some simple on-off switch. It's this incredibly intricate network of nerves connecting the brain to pretty much every organ in your body. And this complexity is key, because it suggests that maybe, just maybe, it can produce the kind of nuanced responses William James was talking about.
Now, to make this whole complex system way easier to understand, let's use a great analogy. Just think of your ANS as having two main branches, kind of like a car. The sympathetic system, that's your gas pedal. It revs you up for action, triggering that ancient fight-or-flight survival response. And the parasympathetic system, well, that's the brake pedal. It calms you down, promoting rest and digest.
Okay, so now that we know about the body's gas and brake pedals, the big question becomes, can we actually find a unique emotional fingerprint in the body for each separate emotion? Finding this evidence was absolutely crucial to settling the debate between James and Cannon.
So to figure this out, scientists came up with this really clever experiment. It's called the Directed Facial Action Task. And the idea was pretty wild. What if you could trigger an emotion, not with a scary movie or a sad story, but by physically making your face form the expression for it?
So participants were given these very specific muscle-by-muscle instructions. Instead of saying, hey, look disgusted, they'd say, okay, wrinkle your nose. Now raise your upper lip. And then they'd have to hold that pose for about 10 seconds while researchers measured things like their heart rate and skin temperature.
And here are the results. Now, at first glance, anger and fear look pretty similar. Both show a big jump in heart rate, which seems to support Cannon's argument. But look closer. Here's the kicker. For anger, finger temperature actually goes up as blood rushes to the hands to prepare for a fight. But for fear, it goes down as blood pulls into the core to prepare for flight. These are distinct, measurable physical fingerprints.
So the really crucial point here is that these patterns directly challenge Cannon's idea of a single, non-specific arousal. We're actually seeing different profiles for different emotions.
What's even more amazing is that these patterns hold true across different cultures. It is worth noting, though, that as we get older, these physiological responses can become a bit weaker, a little more quiet.
And hey, this isn't just true for the so-called negative emotions. Positive feelings have their own distinct signatures too. Contentment, for example, is associated with a slowing heart rate, a state of real bodily calm. Awe, on the other hand, is linked to this unique feeling of physical stillness and openness, almost as if our body is physically preparing to take in new information.
All right, so this is all really fascinating lab science, but so what? How does any of this connect to our actual everyday lives? Well, here's where it gets really interesting. It turns out these internal bodily responses are the very foundation of our social world, constantly broadcasting our feelings to everyone around us.
Let's talk about something called vagal tone. It's basically a measure of the activity of your vagus nerve, which is a huge part of that brake pedal system we talked about earlier. And what's just incredible is that scientists now believe this is the physiological root of compassion. And it makes total sense from an evolutionary point of view, right? You can't really connect with others or care for your kids if your body is stuck in fight or flight mode. You need that calm physiological state for social bonding.
And this graph reveals this amazing, powerful feedback loop. It shows that people who start out with higher vagal tone tend to build stronger social connections over time. But it gets even better. Building those connections then increases their vagal tone. It's this beautiful upward spiral where our body's capacity for calm and connection just reinforces itself through our relationships.
Or think about another example of our body's social intelligence, the blush. We usually think of it as just this awkward sign of embarrassment, right? But it's actually an incredibly sophisticated and totally involuntary social signal. It's basically an honest bodily apology that you literally cannot fake.
You know, the writer Mark Twain famously quipped that man is the only animal that blushes, or needs to. And he was really onto something. Research shows that after someone makes a mistake, people watching actually react more positively and trust them more if they see them blush. That reddening of the cheeks is a powerful nonverbal signal that you regret what you did and you care about the social rules.
Even a simple phrase like getting the chills points to two totally different bodily experiences. Scientists call the tingling sensation you get in your arms from a beautiful piece of music goose tingles, and that's linked to awe and surprise. But the cold shivers that run down your spine? That's your body's reaction to fear and horror. Two distinct bodily signals for two very different emotional worlds.
So, let's bring all this together. After more than 100 years of debate, what's the final verdict? What's our current understanding of this incredible mind-body connection?
Well, what started as just a thought experiment in William James's study has now come full circle. Modern psychophysiology labs, like the one you see here, are using unbelievable technology to map our body's emotional landscape with a precision James could only have dreamed of. And the evidence is really clear. His core idea, as radical as it was right. Our emotions are deeply, deeply woven into the very fabric of our physiology.
So the next time you feel a surge of anger or a knot of anxiety or just a wave of pure joy, remember this. That feeling didn't just pop into your head out of nowhere. It started as a complex symphony in your body. So the final question I'll leave you with is this. The next time you have a gut feeling, what exactly is your body telling your brain?